Wild About Woodlands, presented by Clive Whitbourn, National Trust Ranger for North and West Dorset. In this talk, Clive introduces us to the Fontmell Down Forest School Woodland site. He will be giving us an introduction to what a forest school is, and how forest school experiences can become more accessible to schools in North Dorset and South Wiltshire.
Good evening, everybody. This is the first Zoom talk I've ever given, so I'm a little nervous, but I'm really glad to have a good few of you here to be able to share what is a brand new forest school site at Fontmell Down, and included in my talk, really a bit about forest school. What is it? It's a huge subject if you want it to be, but I've tried to sort of condense it down so it's sort of, a little bit more accessible, because there's a lot of myths flying around about forest school. So I hope to debunk some of those. I did my training back in 2013 and 14, level 3, as a forest school practitioner, and set out to try, with a lot of help from a lot of people, to set a school up, a place where people can visit to book their school or youth organisation in a lovely surrounding place like Fontmell Down, which is a staggeringly beautiful place. I'm a ranger in the North Dorset team, as you can see, North and West Dorset. So I cover properties from Blandford up to Shaftesbury and a little bit to the side of Shaftesbury into Wiltshire. What is forest school? Well, I'm not going to read things off the screen, but it basically it's a way of using the outdoors, a forest or woodland, to convey different vehicles, methods of learning for people to improve themselves from very early years, right really through to adults. The really good place to look for stuff regarding forest school is the Forest School Association, which is a good point of reference. I direct you to that site if you have any further queries. But yeah, forest school, it's a fantastic growing thing, and it's been cited more and more as an important way for children to develop, and that'll become apparent as we go on. So it can promote all these things, these lovely orange maple leaves, and just by being outside with the wind in your face, the green, the greens and browns and all the colours that the countryside have to offer have an effect on us that we don't really realise until we're feeling happier. It's good at lifting moods, and if you couple that with a safe place, a place that's safe and the parameters are known, then it really helps learning. Some of you may well be teachers out there, and I'm sure you know about Maslow's hierarchy of needs if you are a teacher. And for those that don't know about it, it really just shows you in this diagram what we need to flourish. At the very bottom, you can see you need the very basic elements of life. And then as you progress up the pyramid, if you attain most of those things, you're going to basically reach your potential, and then you'll be able to learn. If you're troubled by things in life, whatever that might be at any age, it hampers your ability to learn, and that's been scientifically proven many times over. So I'm just going to get rid of that there. It's an egalitarian sort of setting, really. Everybody is taken at their own face value, and it's a neutral place, but with lots of positivity added to it. It's a nurturing sort of place. Now, you use the word place, the teaching area, the forest school, and it just allows basically people to become relaxed. And then if you're relaxed, you can start to learn and let go a little bit and be yourself, perhaps. So yeah, all of these points here are really good ways of describing, what the participants, are viewed as, and what they can do, and how they feel about each other. In fact, when you have a forest school session, one of the first things you do with the children is to set out boundaries, and you often agree those as a group. So everybody's agreed to these set of rules. And actually, rules are actually quite a key structure to forest school. I'll talk about that a bit later, but you do need rules, boundaries, which are quite rigid. But within that framework, there's a lot of flexibility for learning. So qualifications, there are 4 really. The key one is the level 3. And that is what we're asking for people to have when they use and hire the Fontmell Forest Down School site. Level 3 allows you to run a forest school. The training has given you the tools to enable you to do that. The sort of toolkits, the protective areas that you need to consider, And all of those things considered risk assessments, activities, and an understanding of how a child's basically development exists, how to nurture it, and the need for ratios, and the way that we basically, along the whole forest school journey, we're constantly monitoring and changing and adapting to those individual learners' needs. So, and all of that is underpinned for care for the natural world. So another thing I really love about forest school is it shows children particularly, but adults as well, how important these natural surroundings are. And up at Fontmell, it is amazing. It really is. It's actually one of the largest piece of chalk grassland that the National Trust owns at 293 hectares, larger than areas on the South Downs. It's of course in the Cranborne Chase AONB, and it joins the Dorset AONB, and it's right on the rooftop of Dorset. So all of that is really underpinned by forest school. These are the basic qualifications. There are others, I'm sure. And again, I direct you to the forest school training webpage for this. Also, there are special requirements around first aid, actually pediatric first aid, slightly different to general first aid at work, which actually I'm being refreshed on tomorrow. So to become a forest school leader, you're looking at a minimum of probably 6 months from start to finish. You'll have a week at the beginning, a consolidated week somewhere, and then you go away and you build portfolios and you deliver forest school. You need a school to work with to be able to deliver that, to be able to create the scheme of works and your whole minimum of 6 sessions that we have in forest school. And then after that period, you come back and do some consolidation, and then the final assessment is handed in. It's reckoned to be by some as sort of an A-level standard piece of work. There's a lot of work in it, but there's a lot of good resources out there, and there's some really good actually books to help you along the way. So it's quite expensive in some ways, but it's a really good investment, and a lot of schools now have invested in their teaching staff to be able to become forest school leaders, and they have forest school sites at their schools. So that is becoming more mainstream. This slide is just to show you really for the beginnings of when we started to consider children, or people decided to really value children as individuals, right the way back to about 1746, right the way through to kindergartens and when they were first created, and moving up to the 1900s and then to the early 20th century, scouting, and right up to the present day, really from the 1950s to now is where forest school has been taking place, and that's really Sweden. That's really the birthplace of it. And in the last 15 years in the UK and I guess elsewhere, it's really gained momentum. So you can see that it's taken a long while to reach this point in a way. Now these slides are taken from my trading from many years ago, but just to give you the idea of the complexity of it. We've got thoughts here, so all sorts of things, subtle things that children and adults don't always pick up, and some people are better at these than others. In fact, the other day I heard a great radio program and they were talking about soft skills, and I didn't know what they are, but they're actually people skills, and in industry they're beginning to realize that they're very, very important. So going back to the beginning with children and young adults, enabling them to actually find these subtle cues in body language, and gross and fine motor skills, and having empathy with people. All of these are really nuanced and very subtle, but they're not always there for everybody. Sometimes you have to be introduced to them, and that can be through role models, it can be through role play, or just activities. And key skills, as the slide suggests. I mean, listening, really, really good one. I mean, it's a basic one, but I actually have to struggle to listen sometimes. I really have to take notes sometimes to listen. Teamwork and collaboration, these are all great building blocks for life, and forest school encourages all of these sorts of thoughts. This, I think, is one of the most important aspects of forest school, the emotional side. Respecting others, listening to others. As I've said at the beginning of my talk, that really at the beginning of a forest school session, you'll introduce everybody and we'll set parameters, and we will agree a set of rules about how we're going to respect each other, and that's all agreed. And from that basis onwards, everybody's been party to that, and it sort of builds the foundations for going ahead, for the weeks ahead. Well-being, or in fact spirituality, this is a real buzzword, as everybody's been hearing, and the lockdown, of course, has made it more focused and more important, really, and underlined how important our well-being is on a daily basis, and it can be enhanced by all sorts of things. I can see on the slide, walk through woods, for instance. That's something I try to do a lot, and being yourself and discovering yourself, so you can start to see that it's allowing people to become themselves, a bit freer, and to be in touch with themselves, clear their minds, perhaps. When I say people, I mean small children as well, and it just allows people to develop from that. Social, also very important. Storytelling. In the Forest School Wood, I have seen a lovely, great big beech tree, which would be a perfect storytelling tree. And there's a book I could think of by a famous author, and it's all about an oak tree, but you could convert that to the beech tree. Endless possibilities. But the social skills, they're all there, and all of these things that we're looking at can be factored into an individual's learning on their journey through Forest School, which we generally think is about 6 weeks. So 6 sessions, 6 Wednesdays or 6 Thursdays. Over that period, you can start to see a change, and you can measure a change. Although I have to stress that we're not we're not setting really hard objectives. You must do this, you must do that. It's a journey, and in doing so, it's a very positive experience when you don't put too much pressure on those objectives. Seasonal themes, being in tune with nature, and the more you are, the more you see, and the more you want to see, you see even more. So subtle little things like this bring a great joy. The colour, the luster of those conkers, and the light. I mean, a lot of people I talk to, I don't think they really tune into these subtleties because they're so busy thinking about important things in their lives. They haven't got the time, and that demonstrates again when you're in a neutral place, a place for learning, for creativity, that allows you to lose that background noise and concentrate on what's in front of you. And in doing so, it's just a wonderful experience. Achievement. Well, what's a tarpaulin going to do to establish achievement? Well, if we set this as a sort of task, if you like, to put up a tarp between 2 trees, we'd have to learn a couple of knots. And to do that, we'd have to select the trees properly. There's a fair bit in that. It's a technique with basic principles, but that's something we can ask learners to do at all ages as a team. And in doing so, you soon learn whether you're good at knots, or you find them difficult, or you put a barrier up about that, or you get fed up with it. Maybe it's a bit cold and you have to go on a bit harder. You push yourself a bit more, but it's not the end of the world that you don't achieve it. It's what you learn about yourself in doing it. That's the key. And when you're surrounded by natural materials, although at the Forest School, we won't be allowing just cutting down of trees as and when people feel they want to. We're going to provide materials as and when it's asked for. So we're going to keep the ecology of the woodland in good heart, and keep those trees in good order, leaving deadwood and all those important habitats that we have to consider. But there is scope to do some of this. This was, basically created with an axe. It's green wood, so it's green. It splits really nicely. The tools love it when they're sharp, and that sort of knife is also created the same way with a small Mora knife. And then the binding is a basic knot for that, a whipping knot. Great fun to do. I'm not the world's best knot tie, but I have a few under my hat, and I just keep on perfecting them. And I have to remember them as well and dig deep to do it. But these are all great vehicles for learning and feeling better about yourself. I've just touched on hand tools. This is the Forest School, by the way. I have very few slides of people in the Forest School because of GDPR regulations, and we've only had one school out so far, my son's school, to try it about 18 months ago after we got planning permission, to establish a few things about how far it was to walk from the car park and the capacity to host school groups. So that's a splitting block there. But using hand tools is a really good thing because there's a trust element in a hand tool, and a hand tool like an axe, if children are old enough to use those tools comfortably and safely, or a knife, they are used in very strict ways, almost like drills. I would describe them as drills that have to be done 1, 2, 3, 4, black and white, no gray. You do it this way or you don't do it. And then until you can achieve that, attain that level of competency, exactly as we're asking you, a drill, then you can't do it, because that's down to safety. So there are these rigid things that you have to adhere to in forest school, which is all about safety. But again, it's good to learn certain things in life have to be a certain way, and there's no real margin for error. Just like driving on the road, we all drive on the left. So it's a good thing to establish. That is the forest school site there, looking sort of northeast, I guess. So it's when you look online, the amount of activities that you could do for a school, it's astonishing. This is something where the half created an apple, augured through with a bit of string with some Cheerios on the top, a great bird feeder, a very biodegradable one, a very cheap one to use. But it's, again, one of the things I love about forest school, there are so many things you can do. It's almost endless out there. There's so much inspiration and sharing. So there's no reason why you should be ever short of activities to do, you know, to actually convey and deliver. And new skills, I've mentioned those already. And in learning a new skill, and as you know, children are spending quite a lot of time on screens, particularly in the last year. And there's a trend that seems to be happening, not for everybody, to be actually able to use a tool like an axe or a knife, or even, you know, use a kelly kettle, or to make stew, actually cooking over an open fire. Those are big things, and you know, it just enables children to actually have a sense of responsibility to themselves and to others, which I think is really, really important. A shared purpose. This is den building, and in the forest school itself, a shared purpose, working together as a team, really, really important. I mean, for adults as well as youngsters. And then the accomplishment of doing it, you know, as a team, great, you know, give me a high five and we're all happy. It could be raining at this point, or it could be sunny. The weather adds that final throw of the dice, which you don't know, which again is sort of, you know, what used to be called mild peril, when you've got the elements to consider as well as everything else, and safety as well. Very, very important, particularly with den building with spiky branches. Team working, I've just covered that. It takes all ages, as you can see. Some other activities. There is a very subtle person there. It's a mud sculpture, literally mud put onto a tree, any species of tree you like, and from that you can form shapes. Great fun. This is very subtle. My attempt at a person. I am no artist, as you can see. And then wild art. I always think of an artist called Andy Goldsworthy. I'm sure some of you have heard of, who is an amazing artist with natural materials outside. Incredible things have been created by that artist, but we can all try and do our bit of sort of Andy Goldsworthy type of art, if you like, by just using what's around you. Again, brilliant. You're burning off energy doing it, and it doesn't matter. You can take a picture of it and it doesn't matter if it blows away. It's all there, it's all around you, and it just opens your eyes to more and more and more. I did mention knots. This is some netting for a hammock, which I did. I don't think I could do that now, by the way. It's been a while since I've done it. But yeah, you're always using natural materials where you can, because they degrade and they have a lower impact, of course, on the environment. This is the flyer leaflet in 3 parts, because of the way I had to put it together. But you can see the forest school right out on Fontmell Down. It's the left-hand piece of woodland. The right-hand piece of woodland is part of it in the sense that it's going to drive the, it's going to facilitate firewood for the forest school. Inside the woodland on the left, there's a scheduled ancient monument, a late Bronze Age, early Iron Age cross dyke, and we have to monitor how we use that so we don't erode it. And there are trees all the way along it that were planted about 70 years ago, because that plantation dates, we think, to about 1897. So what I'm driving at here, there will be trees coming down very slowly over time on the monument, and we've replanted trees elsewhere. So it's part of a woodland plan. But you can see the location. To the left is the Dorset Wildlife Trust Reserve, just below on that slope, a top butterfly site. You can see how it's placed right on the rooftop of North Dorset, and you can almost go in any direction and just explore. That's another element. consider. The flyer, I'm not going to read any of this off, but you can see that we have got a proper standpipe. A lot of forest schools have to bring in water because they're in remote situations, but we're very fortunate when we replaced the water system about 2016, the whole of the Fontmell Down water system was replaced. We were able to put in some spurs to facilitate that. So that's a camping site spec tap. We've got a Thunderbox, which is the loo down here. That is the one, the very one. And inside we've got the composting loo this side, and then we've got a storage area this side. And with the composting loo, again, it's another way of using the loo that has to be done in a certain way. There are very strict rules about that. There'll be a source of firewood there, and some of the utensils will be providing, a griddle, Kelly kettle, Dixies, and so on. Some good quotes in there. My son's school came out and they had a lovely time, and the weather was awful, but it didn't seem to matter. Everybody was smiling, even though they were getting wet at lunchtime. A bit more information there, as you can see. The flyer itself looks much better than this, so I'm not really doing it justice. And where is it? Again, a map. I could have clicked on the Google here, but that means opening another screen. But that photograph I just showed you, we were about here looking out, and the Fontmell Down car parks here. The C13 Shaftesbury to Blandford Road's there, and the airfield is here. And the A350 runs along there. So this is all Cranborne Chase, AONB. And there's this T-shaped plantation, and it's this bit really. All of this is the forest school, and then the neighbouring wood is adjacent to that, and that will run in partnership with that to provide this with firewood. So there you go. The fire circle. Now this is taken from my portfolio from a few years back. It's a forest school spec fire site, and again, the way you go in and the way you go out are strictly governed. And you come and sit down. You don't come to the fire unless you're invited to, and if you do, you come to the fire and you kneel. You always have fire by the fire site gloves, a pail of water as well, and a designated forest school leader's seat. No running, and anybody who can't really manage to stay by this will be asked to stay out of the fire circle until they can actually stick to the rules, and rules sometimes are very rigid, and this is one of those situations where they have to be in a generally relaxed environment. The Thunderbox, well, great name. It's a composting loo, and it just really works by people doing what they need to do. The fluid, the water stuff is taken away here, and the solids remain. And then through drying and desiccation and bacteria, you're left eventually with just pure compost. So no need to bring mains, sewerage in, or anything smelly or horrible. If these are used correctly, then they are very, very efficient and low impact. So that's what we have there to facilitate that. And that's what it looks like inside. Very, very basic, but it does the job. On the other side of that forest school, Thunderbox, we've got a storage area, which is going to be full of all sorts of stuff. It's really important to mention that the forest school site is booked by a school or a youth group with a leader. We have housekeeping rules, and we'll do an introduction and a walk around. We'll explain what you are able to do and what you can't do. But essentially, everything you arrive with, you take away with you. So your cleansing stuff, your gels and wipes and tissues, and even the coals from the fire. So once you've had your fire, you have to extinguish the fire like you would anyway. And you would bag up the charcoal and take it away, because we've got an archaeological site close by. We mustn't mix charcoal into the site, because it would just cause complications, and that's one of the conditions. So there are some rules in there. They're very basic rules, and for a good reason. We will supply a first aid kit just in case you don't have your own. But again, any group coming to the school will be self-contained. They'll have everything they need. There will be some kit in there for emergencies. And we will ask people just to basically keep us up to date with any breakages or anything that's gone wrong, or anything needs to be attended. Maybe there's a tree that they see is damaged. We would ask them to report that. All the main trees around the site are numbered. We check the trees as part of our tree safety management policy, which is every year basically. So The other thing to say about trees in really high winds, and we're going to say about 28 miles an hour, we may have to postpone your visit, but we would do that on the lead up to the actual booking. So, and that would just be pushed on to another day. That's something we don't have any control over, but we would need to keep people away from the wood when there are heavy winds. Well, we would also need to better check it afterwards once that's happened, just to see it's safe. Future plans, well, we have in our planning consent, we had a lot of requirements to meet. And one of the things we put in for was a woodsman shed, which is what we have here. If we feel we need to build it, we may not need to build it, but we've got that possibility now. And it's going to be a shed for basically, if we've got an area, if someone's in need of one-to-one, or they need first aid, or the weather's appalling, or we just need to get out and have a group place with nothing in it. There'll be nothing in this building. There's a lean-to element, which will be a sort of log store on one side, and similarly on the side with graded sizes of firewood and kindling, and a vision port as well to see that there is nothing in it. And the roof has got these sort of light panels too. So yeah, that's something that may happen if we need it. If we don't, then we wouldn't really go forward with that. So we'd be building that with all the volunteers. I mean, I must say at this point, the whole Forest School project today has been brought about by lots of different people, lots of help from all sorts of people doing different jobs to make it a possibility. And of course, the whole fabric of it, the building of the fire sites and the breakout areas, and in the future, all the log production and all the maintenance of it is going to be done by our fabulous North Dorset volunteer rangers. And I've got something to show you about those in a minute, but they've been brilliant and they're key to this project. And it's without their help, it wouldn't be possible. So it's a lot of people to thank for this whole project. So and lastly, on that note, the Bath skyline, Natural Trust Bath skyline, Bath, beautiful Bath, they pioneered this in this area anyway, as far as I can tell, for it's certainly Natural Trust circles in this region to have a bookable Forest School site that basically you come and use it. We don't deliver it as Natural Trust staff. The people coming deliver it with their own people or hired in people to do it. And it's been a great success. So the idea for this at Fontmell has come from them. So yeah, that's it. And on that side of things.
Thank you to Clive Whitbourn for presenting this talk as part of the Spring Talk series, hosted by the Chase Chalke Landscape Partnership scheme. Thank you to our partners and funders for this talk. The Chase Chalke Landscape Partnership is a group of organisations working together to protect and enhance the special landscape of Cranborne Chase and the Chalke Valley. With Cranborne Chase AONB as the lead partner, and with support from the National Lottery Heritage Fund, this 5-year partnership is working with local communities to better connect people with the landscape. For more information, please visit www.cranbornechase.org.uk.